5 ways God trains you as his watchman. When Scripture talks about a watchman, it's not describing a prophet or a pastor. A watchman is a guardian, someone placed on the watchtower, standing at a higher point so they can see what others cannot see yet. It's the person who stays awake when others are resting, who notices the early signs of danger, and who quietly protects the peace of those entrusted to them. It's not a public role, not a spotlight role, but it is a deeply trusted position in the eyes of God. It reminds me of something my father used to do when I was growing up. Every night, after everyone had gone to bed, he would walk through the house, check the doors, make sure everything was locked, glance out the windows, and confirm that the house was safe. He never announced it. He never looked for thanks. He simply took responsibility for the peace of our home. Only years later did I realize something important. A watchman is not loud. A watchman is faithful. They stand in the right place when everything around them is quiet. Ezekiel 3:17 says, "I have made you a watchman. Hear my words." It is God who appoints the watchman. He's the one who places them in that higher position, not to make them superior, but to help them see sooner, pray sooner, and protect sooner. Some people are drawn into this role without ever asking for it. They simply find themselves unusually aware, spiritually alert, or gently stirred to pray at unexpected moments. Those are often the early signs of a watchman being trained. If you've ever felt that kind of inner sensitivity, or a quiet responsibility for the people around you, it may be more significant than you think. It may be the way God is shaping you into someone he can trust on the walls of his kingdom. Today we're going to look at 5 ways God trains a watchman, not to place pressure on you, but to help you recognize the beautiful work he may already be doing in your life. This path is not heavy. It is a path of clarity, purpose, and spiritual awakening under the gentle hand of God. Part 1. God awakens you in the quiet hours. Watchmen in Scripture did not stand guard at noon. They stood in the hours when everything was still, when homes were quiet, and when the world felt softer under the darkness. Night was their training ground. It was the place where the mind settled, the heart slowed down, and the spirit became more attentive. And in the same way, God often begins shaping a watchman through the quiet awakenings that come in the middle of the night, not with fear, not with pressure, but with a gentle nudge that feels almost like a whisper. Many believers think they are simply losing sleep, but watchmen learn over time that these awakenings are rarely random. Psalm 119:62 says, "At midnight I rise to give you thanks." Lamentations 2:19 urges, "Arise, cry out in the night, in the beginning of the watches." These verses are not describing insomnia. They are describing invitation. The night is when the noise of the day finally fades, when our guard comes down, and when the Lord can speak to us with a clarity we might miss in the hours filled with routine and responsibility. I've known many people who wake consistently around 2 or 3 in the morning, not because of stress or fear, but simply awake, fully alert, and strangely calm. Some of them used to find it inconvenient. Others tried to fix it with medication or late-night television. But over time, they noticed a pattern. Their hearts felt softer in those moments. Their minds felt less cluttered. Sometimes a specific person came to mind. Other times there was just a quiet pull toward prayer. They didn't force it. They simply responded. And what began as restlessness slowly became a sacred meeting place. That's the beauty of night seasons. When the world goes dim, the soul often brightens. You are less distracted, less hurried, more open. The atmosphere is different. The demands of the day are gone, and the Spirit of God often moves gently in that openness. It's not about praying for hours or carrying heavy burdens. It's about being available in the moments when your heart is most able to hear. This is why many older believers experience this more often. As life slows down, the nights become quieter, and the spirit becomes more sensitive. What feels like a changing sleep cycle is sometimes God creating space. Space for reflection, for gratitude, for intercession, or simply to rest in His nearness. Watchmen are not trained through dramatic encounters. They are trained through repeated moments of gentle awareness. And if you've ever had nights like that, you might recognize what I'm describing. Moments when you wake at the same hour, without knowing why. Moments when the darkness feels peaceful instead of heavy. Moments when someone suddenly comes to mind, even though you haven't spoken to them recently. These are not signs of something wrong. Many times, they are signs of God's trust. Quiet invitations to stand in the gap for a moment. Small stirrings that gradually shape the instincts of a watchman without overwhelming their heart. You might remember nights when the whole house was asleep, and something inside you felt drawn to pray. Maybe not even with words, just a soft awareness that God was near and your spirit was listening. Those are sacred moments. They shape you more than you realize. They teach you that hearing God does not always require a perfect setting. Sometimes it simply requires quiet. So the next time you wake unexpectedly in the night, try not to reach for your phone or fill the moment with noise. You don't need to turn on the lights or overthink what's happening. Just take a slow breath and whisper, "Lord, I'm listening." That simple sentence turns a restless moment into a moment of purpose. It turns the night into a place of training, and it allows God to form in you the heart of a watchman, steady, alert, peaceful, and ready to carry the quiet responsibilities He places in your care. Night seasons are not interruptions. They are invitations. They are some of the gentlest ways God awakens His watchmen, teaching them to notice His nearness in the hours when the world sleeps and the spirit becomes clear. Part 2. God trains your positioning. One of the ways God forms a watchman is by teaching them where to stand, not where they prefer to stand, not where they feel strongest, but where He places them. In Scripture, a watchman never wandered the city looking for a better view. They remained at the post assigned to them, knowing their effectiveness came not from choosing the position, but from trusting the one who appointed it. Habakkuk understood this when he wrote, "I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts." He was declaring something simple but profound. God chooses the place, and I choose to stay there. In real life, this positioning can look surprisingly ordinary. God may place you in the middle of your family as the one who carries peace when emotions rise. He may station you in your workplace as the person who listens more than you react. He may place you in your church as someone who notices people who feel unseen. And sometimes He places you in a particular room of your own home, a quiet chair by the window, a small corner of the living room, a bedside spot where He gently meets you at the start or end of the day. None of these places look dramatic, yet heaven sees them as posts of protection. I once knew an older woman who couldn't move around much anymore. Her body slowed down, her routine grew simple, and she sometimes felt useless. But every morning, before anyone else woke, she sat in the same chair with her hands folded and whispered short prayers for her children and grandchildren. For years she didn't think much of it. But one day her daughter said, "Mom, whenever I come into this house, I feel peace." That chair was her watch post. God had positioned her there, not to be seen, but to guard her family in ways no one else could. I have also heard fathers talk about waking up at the same hour every night. 3 o'clock. 3:15. Sometimes earlier. They used to think it was stress, age, or inconvenience. But over time they noticed a pattern. Those moments carried a weight that didn't feel accidental. They felt aware of their homes, aware of their families, aware of the quiet responsibility resting on them, and many of them began to pray in the darkness, trusting that God had stationed them in that hour for a reason. Their watchpost wasn't a tower. It was time, a sacred window in the night God had entrusted to them. This is the beauty of God's positioning. It rarely looks glorious on the outside. In fact, it often feels unnoticed or unimpressive. But watchmen are not trained for applause. They are trained for alignment. God places them where their presence matters most, even if no one else realizes it. A watchman standing on the wrong wall can't protect anything, but a watchman standing where God assigns them can guard a family, a church, a workplace, or even a single soul with quiet strength. Perhaps you've wondered why you ended up in the family you're in, or why God placed you in a job that feels ordinary. Maybe you've asked why you keep feeling drawn to a certain hour of prayer, or a particular corner of your home that feels peaceful every time you sit there. These things are not coincidences. God does not place his watchmen randomly. He positions them with purpose, knowing exactly what needs covering, exactly what needs prayer, and exactly who needs the steady presence he is building in you. So here is something simple you can do. Choose one place in your home to become your watch post. It doesn't have to be impressive. It just needs to be consistent. A chair, a window, a quiet hallway. Stand or sit there for a brief moment each day, even just a minute, and whisper a prayer for those under your care. Ask God to bless your home, to bring peace to every room, and to keep your heart attentive to what he wants you to guard. Watchmen are shaped not only by what they see, but by where they stand. And when you embrace the place God assigns you, even the most ordinary space becomes a wall of protection in his hands. Part 3. God trains your burden for intercession. One of the clearest signs that God is shaping a watchman is the quiet burden he places inside the heart. Not a heaviness that crushes, but a gentle weight that awakens compassion. Watchmen are people who feel more deeply than they can explain. They sense when someone needs prayer long before anyone says a word. They notice shifts in the spirit that others walk past without realizing. And this sensitivity is not emotional weakness, it is God's training. Scripture gives us a picture of this in Ezekiel 22:30, where God says he looked for someone to stand in the gap. That is the work of a watchman, to step into the empty spaces, the places no one else is covering, the moments where prayer is needed but not requested. God shapes this heart slowly, through small burdens that come and go, each one teaching you how to carry others in prayer without being overwhelmed. For some people, this burden begins with unexpected memories. They're washing dishes or driving home, and suddenly a person comes to mind, someone they haven't seen in years. There's no reason for it. No conversation, no recent update, just a quiet stirring. And that stirring is often God whispering. Pray for them. Sometimes it lasts a minute, sometimes only a few seconds. But those seconds matter. They are the seeds of intercession. Others experience it differently. They wake in the night with a strange urge to pray. Not because anything is wrong, but because something in their spirit feels alert. They don't always know who they're praying for. They don't always understand the timing, but they feel the nudge, and they follow it. Over time, they begin to see that this is not confusion. It is calling. God is shaping their instincts as a watchman, teaching them to respond to his voice with trust, not explanation. There are also believers who feel this burden in conversations. Someone sits across from them, smiling politely, insisting everything is fine, yet the watchman senses a quiet ache beneath the surface. They don't push or pry. They simply carry that person in prayer after the conversation ends. They bring their name before God with sincerity, asking for peace, clarity, strength, whatever the Spirit places on their heart. And the remarkable thing is that many times, those simple hidden prayers become the turning point for someone who never knew they were being lifted. This burden is not meant to exhaust you. God does not place a calling on your life that drains your spirit. Instead, He teaches you to hold these burdens lightly, prayerfully, and with trust. A watchman doesn't carry responsibility for the whole world. They carry only what God places in their hands, moment by moment, and He never asks them to hold more than His grace will sustain. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. A sudden concern for someone who crosses your mind out of nowhere. A sense that you should pray for your child, even though nothing appears wrong. A quiet ache when you think of a friend who has drifted. These are not emotional waves. They are spiritual signals. They are God shaping your heart to feel what He feels, to notice what He notices, to care in the moments where care is needed most. So when a burden rises, don't ignore it. You don't need long prayers. You don't need the perfect words. Just lift the name before God for 30 seconds. Whisper a small prayer for strength or protection. Trust that God knows exactly why He placed that person on your heart. He is inviting you to stand in the gap for a moment, to be a watchman in the quiet way only you can be. And if you want to keep track of these moments, write them down in a small notebook or in the notes on your phone, not to create pressure, but to help you see a pattern. Over time, you may notice that God brings the same people back to your heart, or that certain hours feel more spiritually awake than others. These are gentle signs that God is shaping your calling. A watchman learns to carry people into prayer the way a shepherd carries a lamb. Carefully, quietly, faithfully. And every time you respond to a burden with even a short prayer, you are stepping deeper into the role God is forming within you. You are learning the rhythm of intercession, the sensitivity of the Spirit, and the beauty of standing in the gap where others may never see, but where God is always at work. Part 4. God trains you through silence and isolation. Every watchman in Scripture understood something that many believers overlook today. The wall is a lonely place. A watchman does not stand in the marketplace, surrounded by noise and conversation. They stand on the heights, alone, awake, and attentive. And one of the ways God trains a watchman is by leading them into seasons where the noise around them grows quiet, and the people they once leaned on feel farther away, not because something is wrong, but because God is shaping their ears to hear Him more clearly. Silence is not an easy teacher. Most of us are accustomed to activity, conversation, and the comfort of being surrounded by familiar rhythms. But silence does something meaningful to the heart. It slows us down. It makes us more aware. It clears space in our spirit, so we can distinguish God's whisper from the echo of our own emotions. And many watchmen discover that the moments they felt most alone were actually the moments God was doing His deepest work. Some seasons of life feel strangely isolating. You may sit in a room full of people and still feel set apart. Not rejected, not forgotten, just quietly separated. You participate, you show up, you love the people around you, but something in your spirit knows this season is different. You're not less connected, you're simply being invited to listen. And that invitation often comes wrapped in silence. There are believers who once thrived on constant interaction, yet over time they notice their spirit longing for quieter spaces. They start taking slower walks, sitting longer in their favorite chair, or waking earlier than the rest of the household. These moments are not laziness or withdrawal. They are God preparing them for higher ground. Watchmen must hear what others cannot hear, and that sense is sharpened in places where noise cannot compete. I've met people who described this as a holy pause in their life. They weren't discouraged. They weren't losing interest in people. They simply felt God drawing them inward, teaching them to live from a deeper center. And the more they embraced the quiet, the more they found a clarity that surprised them. Thoughts settled. Prayers grew more honest. Scripture opened in new ways. Their hearts became attentive, not just to what God was saying, but to how He was shaping them. This is the hidden training ground of a watchman. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. Friends may not understand it. Even you may wonder why you feel distanced from the noise you used to enjoy. But heaven knows exactly what God is doing. He is tuning your spirit the way a craftsman tunes an instrument, slowly, deliberately, and with great care. And here's the beautiful part. Seasons of silence are never wasted. God does not call you into quiet to leave you empty. He calls you into quiet to fill you with clarity, with sensitivity, with peace, with a deeper awareness of His presence. The silence that once felt uncomfortable becomes the place where you hear Him most clearly. The isolation that once felt strange becomes the place where your spirit grows strong. Maybe you've been walking through a season like that. A quieter season. A season where conversations feel lighter, routines feel simpler, and the usual noise doesn't hold your attention the way it once did. If so, it doesn't mean you're drifting. It may mean you're being positioned. Watchmen are trained away from distractions, so they can learn to recognize the slightest movement of God. So when life slows down and silence becomes more familiar, try not to rush out of it. Sit with it. Let God speak inside it. Let Him steady your soul and sharpen your awareness. You can even choose a simple practice. Once a day, pause for a minute, without music, without your phone, without distraction, and breathe slowly before God. Whisper something honest. Lord, I'm here. Speak as you will. In the quiet places, God shapes the watchman's heart, not through pressure, but through presence, not through noise, but through nearness. And those who allow Him to train them in silence become the ones who stand steady on the wall when others seek direction, clarity, or peace. Part 5. God trains you to become a protector. When God forms a watchman, He is not shaping someone who merely sees what others do not see. He is shaping someone who protects what others do not notice. A watchman is at the core a guardian, someone who cares deeply, quietly, and faithfully for the people God has entrusted to them. And one of the most beautiful parts of this calling is how naturally it grows. You begin to feel a steady kindness rise inside you, a desire to cover rather than criticize, to strengthen rather than fear, to protect rather than withdraw. Many people think being a watchman is about warning others of danger, but Scripture shows a fuller picture. A watchman stands on the wall not only to signal what's coming, but to make sure the people behind them remain safe. They carry a heart that refuses to abandon their post. When others grow tired, they watch the horizon, but they also watch over the ones who cannot see clearly yet. They become a steady presence in moments when others feel lost. This protective instinct often begins long before a person understands their calling. You may notice it in your own life. When your family goes through a difficult season, you feel drawn to pray for them more consistently. When someone in your church seems discouraged, you cannot shake the sense that you should reach out. When a friend confides in you, their burden lingers in your heart long after the conversation ends. These are not random feelings. They are signs of a heart God is training to protect. I've seen this in parents who quietly intercede for their children every night, even when the children never know it. I've seen it in grandparents who walk through their homes, speaking blessings over every room. I've seen it in young believers who feel responsible to pray for their friends without ever mentioning it out loud. These people do not stand on physical walls, yet they stand spiritually, guarding the hearts of those around them with prayer, with presence, and with steady love. This is how God trains a protector, not through fear, but through compassion, not by urging you to carry the whole world, but by teaching you to carry one person at a time. The heart of a watchman grows strong, not by becoming hard, but by becoming deeply attentive. God teaches you to notice the one who is overlooked, to think about the one who is discouraged, to pray for the one who is slipping through the cracks, and in doing so, you stand in the very gap others walk past. Sometimes this role feels quiet. No one applauds it. Few people recognize it. But heaven sees the watchman who stands faithfully. Heaven sees the prayers whispered in kitchens, cars, and hallways. Heaven sees the moments you choose compassion over irritation, prayer over frustration, presence over avoidance. These small acts build a wall around the people you love, a wall made not of stone, but of faithfulness. And maybe you've wondered why certain people weigh on your heart more than others, why you continue to pray for someone who has drifted away, why you feel protective of someone who seems fragile, why you sense responsibility in relationships where others feel indifferent. It may be because God has entrusted you with a part of their story. Watchmen are often drawn to places where the wall is weakest, because that is the place where protection matters most. Here is a simple way to begin training your heart toward this kind of protection. Write down the name of one person God keeps bringing to your mind. Not a list, just one. Someone who needs covering, encouragement, or strength. Then pray a short, sincere prayer for them each day. Lord, I'm standing in the gap for them. Strengthen them, protect them, guide them. That's all. No pressure, no heavy burden, just faithfulness. As you do this, something beautiful happens. Your heart grows steadier, your compassion grows deeper, your awareness grows sharper, and you begin to see that this protective instinct is not human effort. It is God forming the spirit of a watchman inside you, a protector who stands where others walk away, a guardian who holds a quiet responsibility with grace, a person God can trust with the hearts he loves. Watchmen are not known for their titles. They are known for their presence. And when God trains you to protect, he trains you to reflect his own heart. Faithful, steady, and deeply invested in the people he has placed within your reach. Conclusion. Watchmen are not shaped in crowded places or loud seasons. They are shaped in the quiet, in the steady moments when God works beneath the surface, forming a heart that can stay awake when others rest. Throughout this journey, through the night hours, through the places he positions you, through the burdens he places in your spirit, through the silence that sharpens your hearing, and through the compassion that makes you a protector, God is crafting something sacred inside you. You are not chosen because you are the strongest. You are chosen because you are willing. And willingness is the soil where God plants the instincts of a watchman. Every small moment of prayer, every gentle stirring, every quiet act of faithfulness becomes part of the wall he is building through your life. So walk forward with peace. God sees the place you stand. He sees the care you carry. He sees the quiet ways you respond to his voice. And he is pleased. May you become the watchman he can trust, steady, attentive, and faithfully guarding the walls he places in your care.